Okay, so my new favorite thing to do is look up weird crossovers in pop culture. Like, did you know about the time that Webster spent the day with Lieutenant Worf of Star Trek The Next Generation? Who's Webster? He's the main character in an 80s TV show about an adorable orphan who was adopted by a loving couple. It lasted 6 seasons and was really popular at one point, but for some reason, on the final episode of this show, which I ain't lying, they called Web Trek, Webster accidentally beamed himself on board the Starship Enterprise D by playing a video game during a lightning storm. Yeah, I didn't write it. And you know how old shows do that thing of running old clips from previous episodes? This was a clip show, except Webster made Worf watch the clips with them. Hey, Klingons respect torture, right? And the dance. He taught Worf some kind of dance. That's right. The episode ended with Webster beaming back home, and in his hand was a receipt, I guess, that he got from the Enterprise. So this wasn't a dream, not a hallucination. This is canon, baby. Canon. Webster was on the Enterprise and he taught Worf a dance. That's what this is, right? It's a dance. But the real victory to this story, Worf wasn't the only one who learned that dance. But I wanted more from their conversation, so I did a comic about it. You can download it for free. Worf and Webster forever! I'm Alan, by the way. I make comics, gave a TED Talk, and have had my work in 2 museums so far. Like this video, subscribe, join the Alan Nation, which isn't a place that you can live, even if your name is Alan. Do it, or I'll make you do that Webster dance. Some of you may remember that I have insomnia, so I started working on silly comics for fun when I can't sleep. It's a cool way to occupy my time, and I can experiment with new art techniques. Anyway, Worf and Webster talked in that episode, but there were things that I wanted to know, like, yo, why did Worf pretend like he didn't recognize a human child? Why wasn't Webster the least bit afraid of Worf? Or space? He hadn't been to space before, right? And why were Webster's parents only in the flashbacks? What did you do to your parents, Webster? And why was Webster really on the Starship Enterprise? So, since you guys seem to dig my approach to my Hot Wings Silverhawks video, here was my mission. Number 1, come up with a more interesting conversation for Webster and Worf, at least to me. Number 2, see if I could draw them in a cool style that fit the story. You know, experimentation up in this mug. So look, I've been a Trek fan since I was little, and my dad was showing me TOS reruns. I even interviewed Nichelle Nichols a few years before she passed away, R.I.P., and I asked her about being in a blaxploitation film called Truck Turner, which was when she gave me this look. But she was cool as fuck, by the way. So I love when I encounter these little Star Trek facts that I never knew, like when I first heard Leonard Nimoy's song, Highly Illogical, or a few years ago when I spotted a young Jonathan Frakes on an episode of Fantasy Island. Hello, baby Riker. So, Webster and Worf. Come on, I had to do something with that. I can't remember the last time I've seen an episode of Webster. I don't really know that character's voice, man, but I did binge the entire run of TNG during lockdown in 2020, and Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek show after the original series, so I know my way around some Worf. Had to think about it. If Worf didn't immediately recognize Webster as a human child, what else could he have been thinking? There's gotta be something I can do with that. And Webster's whole thing about playing video games in the lightning, I've done that plenty of times, and I never ended up aboard the Enterprise. So maybe Webster just made it seem like an accident, and he actually had a reason to be there. And maybe I could find a way to connect Webster to the TNG universe, especially since I'm insisting that Web Trek episode is canon. It's canon. Anyway, in my story, I added one more character from Star Trek. I'll show you at the end and give you a link to download this comic for free. Oh, and the comic ends with one more surprise character too. It's ridiculous, I promise. But I ain't gonna lie, I encountered some doubt when I was writing my script. Self-doubt is weird, y'all. I'm obviously doing this for fun, so why am I worried? Like, will anybody care that I'm doing a crossover of 2 shows from 4 decades ago? Also, why do I need people to care? Do y'all ever have that where you're trying to create art of some kind and it suddenly feels like the roof is falling in on you? Like, why does it feel like such an emergency where you feel the fear deep in your body? Do you know what I'm talking about? I think almost all artists have this, so even when I feel it, I have to remember nothing's wrong with you if you feel fear. The key thing to remember is that we can't let fear make our decisions. If it were up to fear, I'd never make any art, so I can't skip past fear. But just because it's here doesn't mean that I have to listen to that mug. So I called my buddy Mason. When we were kids, he was the only friend I had who also loved this geekish. Talking to him reminds me of what I originally loved about this all back when I just wrote things and drew pictures without worrying whether people would like it. I just did it because I loved it. So I thought about the script some more and I realized that there might be something interesting to be found in the fact that Webster never seemed to age much. That was kind of a thing in the show that he stayed tiny. But what if it just meant that he aged slower? Of course, after I wrote the script, I needed to figure out what style I would draw Worf and Webster in. Every time I tried to draw Webster, it kept coming out wrong and I was experimenting with more complex angles. And I tried a couple of different things with the background. In panel 1, I just pasted a space background to see how that worked. And in panel 3, I tried something different. I found some 3D models of the Enterprise D's bridge from SketchUp and tried to see what it'd be like to plug it into that one panel. Then I drew over it, adding some texture and line work. I'll tell you right now, that panel looks a little too video gaming to me, so I'm going to have to work out how to better utilize a tool like that. Look at this panel. I think drawing on top of that background made me draw my characters with stiffer body language, so I'll work that out on the next one. Oh, and speaking of experimentation, I added space borders to give the whole story a galactic feel. Plus, I drew this story in small boxes because I wanted to see if it would be cool to maximize people's ability to read it on a phone. We'll see. Let me know what you think. Yay or nay, but be nice. Anyway, here are the inks. The inks are the more detailed phase where I'm drawing body language and facial expressions. I tell you this, in comics, it's more important to be a good storyteller than to be a quote-unquote good drawer. During the inks, I add some textures, stuff like that. You know, I'm pretty confident as a writer, but I feel like I've been playing catch-up as a visual artist. So doing these short projects keeps me practicing and improving while I'm having fun. Oh, and just so you know, if you want to join me and other comics creators in a writing drawing group, I do one online every third Wednesday where we work and then take breaks where I give live feedback and answer whatever questions you have. Okay, now the part that always intimidates me, the colors. I want to show you this. I can get pretty strong rendering by doing just 3 layers, flat colors, shadows, and highlights. Like I said, that's basically what they do in a lot of animation. Mostly I think it's coloring the backgrounds that intimidates me, but in this case I dropped the opacity so you just get the sense of where they are and put more focus on the characters. This was different than I did on my Silverhawks comic, and I'm still deciding how much I like it. So what did I learn? Well, if I'm going to use backgrounds for something else, I'm not going to like them unless I redraw them and add texture. Really, it takes me longer, but I just like the final project when I spend more time in the background. So that's something to take note of. And here was another time where I felt doubts about what I was doing. That doesn't seem like it's ever going to go away, you know? But I went through it, I finished it, and look at this. Webster and Worf having a much more interesting conversation. And yo, who's that? Guinan? What? I love that I get to create fun things in my art. You can do it too. It's not all about your ability. Your art has value just because you create it. Being able to sell it isn't the same as creating it, and we gotta remember to let ourselves enjoy the creation. Like I said, you can download and read this comic for free at the link in the description, or just pop over to R. Allen Writes, that's ALAN, 4 letters more better. Click on the free comic section and you can read this plus other comics I've done for free. But here's the more important thing, my friends. Art should never be stopped by fear, even small art. If you're watching this, then I encourage you, make art, even when you're sad, even when you're afraid, and see what beautiful things you can bring into the world. The world needs all of the beauty that it can get, so don't keep it away from us. Cheers, my friend. Make sure you like and subscribe because I'm doing more of these short comics and videos and I want you to be part of it with me. Oh, and if you're a Patreon kind of person, I'm R. Allen Writes over there too. You can actually see these projects as I'm working on them and download the behind the scenes stuff. By the way, I learned about this Webster Worf crossover in the Atomic Abe YouTube channel, so thanks to them. And I did track down and watch some episodes of Webster while I was drawing this, and you know what? I suffered so you don't have to.